9:20. Kevin says Ireland had and will again soon have an Irish-Indian gay Prime Minister. Oh, Taoiseach. From a country like Ireland with its Catholic background, it didn't bother anyone. I think this race issue is completely over-analysed. Well, let's talk to Albie Amankona, co-founder of the campaign group Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. Albie, how significant is Rishi Sunak becoming Prime Minister from his background's point of view?
Look, I think, of course, it is a significant moment when Britain, I was going to say, elected its first British ethnic minority Prime Minister, although there's some questions around whether or not you would say this was an election. But let's say appointed their first British ethnic minority Prime Minister. Of course, it is a hugely significant moment. And you might remember, Ian, a couple of years ago, you and I were at Conservative Party conference on your show Cross Question, and you were asked whether or not the first ethnic minority Prime Minister would be a Conservative or a Labour Prime Minister. And I said that it would be a Conservative Prime Minister, and that's exactly what's happened. But now isn't the time, I don't think, for us to sit around and pat each other on the back and say, good job done for diversity. This Prime Minister is inheriting an in tray with some of the biggest economic and social challenges that any peacetime Prime Minister has faced. And actually, we should be judging Rishi Sunak not on how he looks or on his religion, but on how he's going to act in the national interest to solve these problems that everyone in the country needs him to solve.
Does this whole reaction, particularly on social media, suggest that the left has a bigger racism problem than the right? Because I think that the reaction from some people on the left has, I think you could interpret it as being racist, where because Rishi Sunak is a Tory and has become the first person of colour to become Prime Minister, they seem to have an issue with that.
Yeah, yes, we have seen the same old left-wing tropes coming out on Twitter about, an Asian conservative wealthy man not being able to represent the interests of ethnic minorities across the country. We've seen that from Labour MPs, we've seen it from SNP MPs, and it's disappointing, but not unexpected. And ultimately, it is the Prime Minister's job to deliver for everyone in Britain, not just for people from ethnic minority backgrounds. And it's always disappointing to see, racism turned into a political football rather than people just saying, this is a really big moment for Britain and let's see what he does before we make a judgment on whether or not he's a good or a bad Prime Minister.
Do you think that we in the media go over the top about racial issues in politics? And for example, I commented on the fact that in the last government, that there wasn't a single white male in the top jobs in the cabinet, and I thought that was noteworthy and was a sign of progress in some ways. But if Rishi Sunak doesn't have as many people from non-white back, and I use this phrase non-white because it encompasses everybody, not just British Asians, but also black Africans as well. If his cabinet doesn't have as many people from those backgrounds as Boris Johnson's or Liz Truss's, then again people are going to say, well, that's outrageous.
Look, I think we've got to start moving on from saying that something is good or bad because it's diverse, and actually focus on whether or not these people are good or bad at their jobs. And Rishi Sunak has said earlier on today that he wants to form a cabinet which is inclusive of all the different types of Conservatives that are in the party. That wasn't something which the last Prime Minister did, and I think it was ultimately part of her downfall. We've got to start judging people on the merits of their actions and their talents rather than how they look or how loyal they are to someone in a leadership contest. We've got to start judging people based on how good they are at their jobs. And I also think it is also a significant moment still to notice that actually, this country has made a huge journey on race relations. This is the Conservative Party was the party of Enoch Powell, and now it is the party of Rishi Sunak, the first ethnic minority Britain Prime Minister.
I think that's a very good way to end. Albie, thank you very much indeed. That's Albie Amankona, co-founder of the campaign group Conservatives Against Racism. Right, let's go to you.